How to invest in Bitcoin correctly for long-term profits. Bitcoin behavior and history. Bitcoin is very volatile, and that is an advantage if we know when to buy it. Bitcoin has been moving in 4-year halving cycles since 2009, when it was created by Satoshi Nakamoto. So the key is to understand how Bitcoin behaves and when it is appropriate to buy it, when to hold it, and when to sell it. These 4-year cycles are based on Bitcoin mining. Every 210,000 mine blocks is a halving. Bitcoin halving is that miners receive 50% less reward for it every 4 years, and this leads to Bitcoin becoming rarer every year. That is, it is more difficult to obtain it. Thus its value as a commodity increases. In the short term, Bitcoin is influenced by sentiment, at what someone says in the media such as Trump or Musk, how indices such as the S&P 500, Nasdaq are doing, or what interest rates are and the like. But we are not interested in this sentiment in the long term. Halving cycle. Each 4-year Bitcoin cycle looks like a standard economic cycle, but Bitcoin is much more predictable, and that is our advantage. So each cycle has its bottom, growth, peak, and subsequent decline. In the historical Bitcoin chart, it is easy to see how each cycle moved and when had peaks and bottoms. The first peak of the cycle was in 2013, the second in 2017, the third in 2021, and the fourth is now in 2025, so every 4 years. It can be easily deduced that these years are the ideal time to sell Bitcoin. So when is the time to buy? The bottoms of each cycle were about a year to a year and a half after the top, and that was based on the end of 2014, the end of 2018, the end of 2022, and according to this formula, it can be concluded that the next great time to buy will be the end of 2026. Each of these cycles from the bottom to the top had hundreds to thousands of % growth, and therefore we do not have to be greedy but only patient. If you are not a capable trader, then the optimal Bitcoin for you is mainly to buy well, and then hold, and not try to hit the top of the cycle directly, but only the right period, and you can still earn several 100% each Bitcoin cycle. Strategy. If you want to be a long-term profitable investor, you have to think carefully and not take hasty steps. Every investment carries risk, but this can be eliminated with diversification and patience. You shouldn't put your entire portfolio into each investment, but only a large part to keep your cool and not sell in a panic. The principle is actually very simple. Buy low, hold high, and sell high. But even then, many people can't do it and sell below the price. You have to know exactly what your tolerance for risk is. If it's high, you can put a larger part of your portfolio into each investment. But if you don't have a large enough tolerance for risk, you have to diversify your portfolio more. For diversification, indices such as the aforementioned S&P 500 or Nasdaq are used, and then some conservative investments such as gold, Coca-Cola, or tobacco companies that have stable dividends. Bitcoin's intrinsic price. Bitcoin has an intrinsic price that is closely tied to the cost of mining it. This intrinsic price reflects the costs that miners incur to obtain new Bitcoins, mainly electricity and hardware costs. Here's an explanation of how it works and how this intrinsic price moves in relation to halving cycles. Mining costs and intrinsic price. Electricity costs. Bitcoin mining requires a huge amount of electricity. Miners use specialized computers, ASICs, that consume electricity to solve complex mathematical problems to verify transactions and add new blocks to the blockchain. Electricity costs are one of the main factors that determine Bitcoin's intrinsic price. Hardware costs. Miners must invest in powerful hardware that is capable of mining Bitcoin efficiently. These machines have a limited lifespan and must be regularly renewed, which also contributes to the overall cost of mining. Other costs. In addition to electricity and hardware, there are other costs, such as the cost of cooling, maintaining, and operating mining equipment. The intrinsic price of Bitcoin is therefore derived from these costs. If the price of Bitcoin were to fall below this intrinsic price, Miners would no longer be motivated to mine because their activities would be unprofitable. Conversely, if the price of Bitcoin significantly exceeds the cost of mining, miners have a greater incentive to invest in additional hardware and electricity, which can lead to an increase in mining difficulty. Halving cycles and intrinsic price. Halving. Every 210,000 blocks, approximately every 4 years, an event called halving occurs, in which the reward for miners for mining a new block is reduced by half. This mechanism is part of the Bitcoin protocol and aims to control inflation and gradually reduce the emission of new Bitcoins until a maximum of 21 million Bitcoins is reached. Impact on intrinsic price. After a halving, the reward for miners is reduced, meaning that miners will receive fewer Bitcoins for the same amount of work. If the price of Bitcoin remained the same, mining would become less profitable or even unprofitable. In order for mining to become profitable again, the price of Bitcoin would have to increase to compensate for the reduced reward. This means that halving cycles tend to push the intrinsic price of Bitcoin up, because miners need a higher price to maintain their profitability. Long-term trend. In the long term, the intrinsic price of Bitcoin is expected to rise as the cost of mining increases, mainly due to increasing difficulty and rising electricity prices, while the reward for miners decreases. This may lead to a higher price for Bitcoin to maintain miners' motivation. Price and cost balance. Market equilibrium. The Bitcoin market will eventually reach an equilibrium where the price of Bitcoin reflects the cost of mining. If the price drops too low, some miners will stop mining, which will reduce the overall hash power of the network and reduce the difficulty of mining. This can lead to a resurgence in mining profitability. Conversely, if the price increases significantly, more miners will join, which will increase the difficulty of mining and costs. Speculation and market psychology. It is important to note that the price of Bitcoin is not determined solely by the cost of mining. Market speculation, demand, supply, and overall confidence in Bitcoin also play a significant role. However, the intrinsic price based on mining costs serves as a kind of floor for the price of Bitcoin, below which mining would cease to be economically viable. Conclusion. The intrinsic price of Bitcoin is closely tied to the cost of mining, especially the cost of electricity and hardware. Halving cycles tend to push this intrinsic price up because they reduce the reward for miners, requiring a higher Bitcoin price to make mining profitable. In the long run, the intrinsic price is expected to rise along with increasing mining costs and decreasing rewards. However, market factors and speculation also play a significant role in determining the ultimate price of Bitcoin.